كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Brothers and sisters, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he was once sitting in the masjid along with his companions, and he, having that special connection to the divine, a special connection to Allah, knew of things of the unseen that we as mere mortals could not see. And one of the inspirations that was given to him was that he told his fellow group of companions that the next man to enter, and they as the companions are unable to see who's able to enter, they're not having windows or any other fixtures by which they can see outside. But he ﷺ knew of the person that was to come. He said of him that the person to enter will be a person of paradise, will be a man of Jannah. Abdullah bin Umar, one of the young companions of the Prophet ﷺ who was witnessing this, he came to hear of this, and he and the other companions are eagerly waiting to see who's going to enter this door. Is it going to be Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu or one of the other illustrious companions? Is it going to be one of those that they already knew was promised paradise, and he was just reaffirming that message? No. A man entered, and they said that this was an average, phony man, someone who came to pray, someone who was involved, but it wasn't as if they knew him for anything extraordinary. It wasn't that you saw that person and, oh, this person is always in the masjid 24/7. Oh, this person has committed their life towards learning Quran and fiqh or hadith. It was another brother in the community. And so Abdullah bin Umar got very curious and was wondering, why was this man called by a Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam as a man of Jannah, of being among Ahlul Jannah? And so we know Islamically that if someone asks to stay with you, the proper etiquette is to let them stay with you for 3 days. That is, one of our tenets of hospitality as Muslims. And so Abdullah bin Umar used that excuse, not that he needed lodging, but he really just wanted to find out what was special about this man. And so he asks him, can I stay with you for some time? He says, of course, your house is my house. Stay. And so he stays with him, and he lies down and appears to be sleeping, but he's not asleep yet. Just waiting to see what this man will do. This man does not do anything special. He prays a few rak'ah of qiyam that all the Sahaba would do. But it wasn't like he was crying or reciting extra Quran all night. It seemed to be normal. During the day he saw him eat, during the night he saw him sleep. And so he's wondering, what is it about this man that made him a person of Jannah? And he kept on, waiting until his time, the 3 days passed, and then he goes to the man and he says, to be very candid with you, to be very honest with you, the reason I'm here is that, and he told him the story of something a man of Jannah enter. He says, so what do you do that's so special? Because it's not something that I can visibly see. And the man says, I don't really do anything out of the ordinary. Confirming what Abdullah bin Umar was witnessing. He says, I just do one thing every day. Every night before I go to sleep, I make dua that Allah cleanse my heart of any hatred or malice towards my fellow Muslims, and that He forgives anybody who has hurt me. That He forgives anybody who has wronged me. Meaning, oh Allah, cleanse and purify my heart so that it doesn't hold any malice, any hatred, any feeling of ill will because of the way someone else treated me. simple action that seems simple. It's just a few words to say to forgive. But we know within our hearts how difficult this can be. You might have someone that makes fun of you every time you see them. They comment on your body shape, your weight, the way your hair looks, the type of clothes you're wearing. They might laugh at your intelligence. They might laugh at the family you come from, the house you live in, the job you have, the family you have. There are people that hurt us in different ways. And some of them have power over us. They might be our employers, they might be our parents, they might be people of influence in the community. And we don't feel a way out. And we start harboring all of this resentment that just builds up, and clogs up our heart. That we're unable to even have any space in our vessels for any good, because it's filled with so much contrite feelings of hatred. That we just feel so wronged, and therefore we start looking at the whole world as just a complete prison by which we have no means out. And we forget that the power to forgive is still ours. It is not someone else's. And we forget that Allah is the most just. He will take care of it. And that we should not let others' actions cloud our heart. Because when you spend and save all of this space in your heart for other people, there's less space for Allah. There's less space for good. There's less space for peace. Your heart will become turbulent with all of this ill will that you're harboring. Brothers and sisters, the idea of justice is something that we believe in and that gives us life, that we know on the day of judgment that Allah will make all things right. We do our best in this world to rectify what we can, but on individual interactions, it is advisable, it is recommended, it is honorable, commendable for us to forgive what we can. This is the hallmark of a good Muslim, of hilm, of having that soft nature, that understanding nature, that someone treats you badly, you don't immediately go off at them, but rather you wonder, maybe they're having a difficult day. Maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I do need to rectify something about me. Thank you for giving me that advice. Or someone did something to you and it's honestly unforgivable. It's something that there's no way, it's unexcusable rather. There's no way to look past it. But you say, maybe this is a lesson for me on how I should not act with other people. At the very least, there's always a lesson that you can take away. Much more than just giving them a piece of your mind. Once the Prophet ﷺ was with Abu Bakr, and they had some disbelievers come and just start making fun of them and cursing them and saying words to them. And he ﷺ remained quiet. Abu Bakr is watching this happen, and he's waiting for his leader, or Nabi, to say something, and he doesn't say anything. And Abu Bakr, out of a good intention, he starts responding. And he starts saying, oh, you said this? Well, this is also true about you. Or don't you know this? And he starts aggressively rebutting everything that these disbelievers were saying. After the incident happened, the Prophet ﷺ turned to Abu Bakr and said that, did you know that the time when we were quiet and we were just taking whatever they were saying, that there were angels that were responding on our behalf and that were making dua for us, and that when you began to respond is when they left, is when the duas ended. It is easy to respond. It is easy to do tit for tat, that someone says something, you immediately have a response. What is difficult is having that self-control and going above the squabbles and cheap insults that someone might throw your way. Imam al-Shafi'i commented on this once, and he said that Lions do not respond to the barks of dogs. Lions are busy taking care of their herd. You know that if you are a lion, and each Muslim is a lion, if each Muslim is a magnificent creature, and humans are even better than all this, it's an analogy, but if all of us have been given majesty, have been given karamah, have been given honor by Allah, and then someone says something, sometimes the best answer is no answer, is to just put it to the side, not even give it any time of day, give it no attention, and forgive them. Forgive them, for they do not know. فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. They may be ignorant, they may not have been raised properly, they may not have gotten an education, they may have a bad day, so many things. But that does not need to affect you. You move on. This idea of forgiveness requires a very, very high level of iman and a very strong sense of tawakkul, of reliance on Allah, that Allah will take care of affairs, that Allah will reward you for your silence, for your forgiveness, that Allah will take care of affairs, and that you ultimately will see a reward of this in this world and in the next. If you believe all of these things, then why do you need to engage every single person that has hurt you? Why do you need to spend so much of your time constantly thinking, I was victimized, I was wronged, I was hurt? And that shapes your psychology, that shapes you as a person. That you start looking at everything as if I'm just being wrong. Each person out here is here to get me, is here to manipulate me, is here to take advantage of me. Whereas Islam teaches us to assume the best of others, to have that husn of love. The best people that have exemplified this patience are those that were the righteous and the prophets before them. When you look at Yusuf Arif-Salam, you realize that forgiveness is not just something that you do when you're the victim and powerless, but that forgiveness gets even more beautiful when you have the power to not be forgiven. That when you have the power to not forgive, but you forgive, that's when you see the mark of a strong person. And you see the mark also when they forgive something that was very egregious, something that was a very big action taken against them. In the case of Yusuf Salam, both things happened. His family, his own brothers that shared blood with him, threw him into that well, leaving him to die, leaving him to be rid of. And he doesn't just get out of the well and go call his father on a phone and go back home crying. No, he takes years, decades away from his family, being a servant and then being stuck in prison. Just pain after pain that he's experiencing, until he finally is able to rise past all of that. And he's now a minister, and he's now actually involved in the government in a position of power, and his own family comes seeking basic provisions. And when they come to know of who he is, they are terrified. They don't know how he's going to respond. If he decided at that moment all of them should be executed, nobody would have said anything. People would have said, okay, we understand that the punishment matches the nature of the act that was done. If he was to banish them out of Egypt and banish them to a different country altogether and take all of their livelihood, nobody would have said anything. And yet in that moment of power, when he easily could have done something, he forgives them. He forgives them. Brothers and sisters, how many times in your own life that maybe you were a child and you had a teacher that used to make fun of you? How many of you had parents that maybe said something to you or maybe physically hurt you? And now you look at them and they're old and you're the one who's strong now, and now you could easily do anything you want to them and they wouldn't be able to fight you back. How many of you have had a boss that caused you trouble and now that boss is asking you for a job? How many of you have been in a situation where you really got hurt by someone, but now you're in a position to help them or hurt them? It happens to us all. It happens to us on a regular basis. That we could easily just remind them of the hurt that they did and just continue to make them suffer. But when you forgive them, you free yourself. And you reach this higher level where people now make dua for you. That people learn to be better as a result of you going above them. That, sometimes when people mistreat you, it's because they're trying to control you. But when you forgive them and you don't even pay attention, they can't control you. And they realize that that's a better way to act. Prophet ﷺ, when you hear a similar story, and he in fact said as he entered Mecca, and everyone's now also trembling, he said himself that I say to you the words of Yusuf, go, you are all free. I have forgiven each and every one of you. He directly references the forgiveness of Yusuf ﷺ, who was in a position of power. As the Prophet ﷺ is entering, he also is in a position of power. But he ﷺ taught us that you have humility even in the time of power. That when he ﷺ was entering, a conqueror, thousands of men strong, on a people that treated him so despicably, he could have come in with his head high, his chest up, and yet he came completely humble, his face looking down, just making dua to Allah the entire time. And this act of forgiveness, when you really reflect on the events that happened in Uhud, in Khandaq, when he ﷺ himself was physically hurt and his metal sheet went into his cheek, when the disbelievers were celebrating, we have killed Muhammad, Muhammad is dead, when they knocked his blessed teeth out of his mouth, when they murdered his own uncle and ate from his body parts, when they surrounded his beloved town of Medina with the intention of killing everyone inside. You think of all of those egregious things that were done. The same people that boycotted Muhammad ﷺ and his believers for death. And he had the capacity, the foresight, the ability to forgive. SubhanAllah. Who are we to not forgive? Who are we to not forgive? And it was not just the prophets, even the companions, radiallahu anhum, even the righteous that came afterwards, kept this exact same thing happening. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, in the famous story that many of us know, he would take care of a family relative. And when the scandal came about, where there were allegations, false allegations, that his daughter Aisha had committed an affair with someone aside from her relationship with the Prophet ﷺ, that one of those that was propagating this message was that same relative that Abu Bakr took care of. This was a man whose bank account had Abu Bakr's money in it, and yet he's going around spreading rumors of his own daughter. Abu Bakr originally cut off the money. So this is unacceptable, that you have hurt me so much, you're hurting my own family. You're saying I didn't raise her right. You're saying that my own daughter was not being a faithful wife to the Prophet. But then the verses of Quran came down. Would you not love that Allah forgives you? And he, Abu Bakr, he forgave that man and he continued to pay him. He didn't just say, I forgive you and just let's make peace. He continued to pay and support this man's livelihood. This is the way we should be. If you had people when you were younger and you were a child and you were powerless, and they might have been a teacher, they might have been a parent, they might have been someone in authority, and they hurt you, and now you're older and you have a chance to do something, forgive them. For Allah will reward you. If you are currently in a position right now where someone in your family is hurtful to you, that someone at work, someone at school is hurtful to you, forgive them. It is better for you. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Brothers and sisters, forgiveness is not something easy. It's hard enough when someone comes to you and they recognize that they did something wrong. As in the examples we shared about Yusuf and Prophet entering Mecca. That they knew what they did was wrong and now they're asking for that mercy. And you now can pick whether you give them that mercy or not. That's already very difficult. Because you have so many layers and layers of memory. And your heart might be full of all of this hurt that you're carrying from all the ways that they hurt you. It's already hard enough to forgive them then. But an even higher maqam, an even higher station with Allah, is that you forgive them without them even asking. You forgive them without them even wanting. You forgive them without them even caring. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he was someone who was severely tortured for his beliefs, for his correct beliefs on the Quran not being created and being the speech of Allah. For that, the Khalifa was against him. The authorities were against him. The entire nation was against him. And yet he stood strong until the whole ummah came to his side and was galvanized to the truth. He was eventually freed, and he eventually became the influential figure that we know now. And it happened during his own lifetime, towards the end of his life, that people would come and they would say, I used to be a guard in that prison, and I was one of those that used to whip you. I was one of those that used to torture you. Please forgive me. He says, of course you're forgiven. Of course you're forgiven. His son Saleh ibn Ahmad, he was witnessing all this, and he says, he's wondering, how are you forgiving them? How are you able to forgive them? And he asks his father that, how about those that aren't even here? How about those that didn't even get the chance to ask for your forgiveness? I mean, he's wondering all of these things, so he starts asking his father, Father, how are you forgiving these men that hurt you so badly? And he says, don't you know the verse in the Quran in Surah Shura, ayah 40? فَمَنْ عَفَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. That those who forgive and act righteously and do good, then their reward is with Allah. Father, how about those who passed and didn't get a chance to ask for forgiveness? And he says, Son, I already forgave these people before they even came asking for my forgiveness. And I forgave them, and he said specifically, I forgave them for the beating that they have done. He did not say, I forgave them because they came to me, and therefore I accept their forgiveness. No, he was the one that was proactive, and he forgave them before they even came to ask for forgiveness. Meaning they didn't even need to come to ask. He had already forgiven them. This was a man with a heart of gold. And he tells his son that, the narrations, that the tafsir of the verse, that those who forgive, their reward is with Allah. That on the day of judgment, all of the nations will be on their knees. And this was reported by Hassan al-Basri. That all of the nations, everyone that was ever created will be on their knees. And Allah will say, only those rise who are amongst those who did what? Afa wa aslah. Those who forgave and did good to people. Don't you want to be among them, son? And then his son is so moved and he asks him, how are you able to forgive them when they've hurt you so much? And he says, son, do you want anybody on the day of judgment to be punished because of you? I pray to Allah that nobody is punished on my account. I pray to Allah nobody is hurt on my account. SubhanAllah, like another complete plane. That he doesn't even want anybody, like, some of us, we forgive the person, but we don't forget. And we say that on the day of judgment you will see. On the day of judgment you will hear. And if that's your way of coping, that's your way of coping. But Imam Ahmad, he took it to the next level and he says, Oh Allah, I pray that nobody is punished or hurt on my account. I wish Jannah for everyone. I wish good for everyone. Brothers and sisters, forgiveness is so difficult. And as we shared in the beginning, that Sahaba who was called a man of Jannah just because every night before he went to sleep, he said, Oh Allah, remove any ill will, any malice, any hatred towards my fellow believers, and forgive all of those who have wronged me. It's so easy to say this, but it is so difficult to believe this. It is so difficult in your heart to actually cleanse it. But once you cleanse it, you will find more space for Allah. You will have more light in your heart. You will have more peace in your heart. You will have more space in your heart to do good. So think of those that perhaps on a regular basis you might have this vicious cycle of thinking about the hurt, thinking about the revenge you might want to make, thinking about all the things that you might want to do, and forgive them. No matter how bad it was, forgive them. Because your reward is of Allah. And you will become closer to Him as a result. May Allah cleanse our hearts. May Allah purify our hearts. May Allah help us to find the ability to forgive others. May He raise our ranks and give all of us Jannah al-Firdaus al-A'la with the Prophet ﷺ, the righteous and the Salihin. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى
وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Inshallah, tomorrow there are 3 events happening at Dar-us-Salaam. First one in the morning at 10 a.m. There is a drive-through for those that need their vaccine, inshallah. And then at 7 p.m. there will be the annual fundraising dinner. The annual fundraising dinner for Dar-us-Salaam. Please make sure to come out and support. This will be virtual, so you can attend from the comfort of your house, inshallah. But please attend and donate. Inshallah,